The big, beautiful bill. It is not going anywhere as far as what I can see. We've got Elon Musk defecting. We've got prominent members of the Republican Party actively disavowing it, saying that it's going to increase the deficit. It's not doing what they wanted it to do. Many members now, having read it, don't like it. Lucas, fill us in on what's going on here. It feels like there's cracks in the armor of the solidarity of the Republican Party, and we're not even anywhere close to midterms, and they're already fighting. It seems like this is the time when things would normally be happening, would be getting passed, but this big beautiful bill, it seems like it's blocked.
Well, you said that that now some of the members of Congress are reading it. I doubt that they're doing that. There's been attention that's been paid to a couple of aspects of the bill. Uh, there's the increase of the debt ceiling by $5 trillion. So it was not a surprise to me, but it's still a surprise. I mean, I'm not surprised that it's come to a point of raising the debt ceiling bill or raising the debt ceiling, but that it's been thrown in with this much larger bill that they thought they could to pass these tax breaks, because there's tax breaks that are taxes that are being retired in the bill. And then there's also something that's gaining some notoriety and pushback, and that has to do with Palantir and a moratorium in that bill with regards to state and local governments passing any sort of regulation on AI. So the policies
Yeah,
of
and I think it was Marjorie Taylor Greene. That's the one I was thinking about when you said nobody's reading it. Well, I mean, this is, I guess I was vaguely alluding to that, to the fact that she voted for it, then later said she regretted that she hadn't read it closely enough, or that she hadn't read it at all, because there were those AI provisions in there. And I think she's been one of the most vocal people around AI and how some of the more technocratic members of the Republican Party have been considering what they want for regulations, legislation, and what have you. So I think that this was her concern in having read it after the fact.
Well, and I think it's just a broader problem whenever you put all of these resolutions into one large bill. Um, uh, it becomes difficult for any member, and why would they read it anyway if they're going to be voting with or against their party, and they can't make nuanced opinions about what's good for their district or where their values are at. That's sort of the political calculation that's behind lumping all of this into one behemoth and calling.
What did we used to call this? I mean, the
And
term that I'm familiar with when we would have these big bills like this are omnibus bills, and these are have largely been lambasted over the years as one of the worst things that can happen, because there's all these compromises that take place and nobody's really happy, and we end up with this really garbage bill that has tons of pork. Remember when we used to use the word pork?
I mean, they still use pork lipstick on pigs. Now everyone's talking about the lipstick on the biggest pig now is the loss in Ukraine, the upcoming admission of that. But yeah, omnibus bill. I guess there was either too many syllables or they couldn't find anything charming to rhyme, or that alliterated with an O. But it, this is there's a broader problem here, and this is where libertarians are flummoxed, and even politicians who claim to be libertarians and are then voted in have to pivot and say, oh no, I'm a conservative, because when the only power of the government relies on them spending money, it's very, very hard for them to cut spending. And that's some of the complaints that are being trotted out. I mean, there's the age old picking of winners of dealing out pork, so to speak, and it seems that Palantir is being targeted or highlighted as the biggest you know the biggest recipient of that pork, with this moratorium on any competition that would be coming from them, and have the enforcement of state and local governments. But this is, a broader problem than just Republicans or just Democrats. This is a problem of democracy, and
I
we
mean, that's the standard criticism against democracy, right? Is once the people figure out that they can vote money out of the treasury, it's sort of the end of that democratic institution. Once you figure that out, that's why we're supposed to be in a republic, right? It's not a democracy.
well, and not just a republic, but this is why I always point out that even the greatest check on the federal government was supposed to be a reliance on the competition between the national state governments. But we've thrown that by the wayside. Um, Politicians do not make any admission as to the limitations of the federal government's power. Um, uh, they're talking about they talk about the supremacy clause and the necessary and proper clause, but um, the federal government is limited to commerce, and so when they want to make all of these rules that they talk about, they wind up in a bind of having the only way to enforce that through the states is through tying uh, uh, tying their the doling out of federal funding uh, to the states complying with the laws that they disseminate. So, and when I saw the AI provision, or the moratorium on AI regulation, my first question was, uh, is there some sort of spending that is a quid pro quo? We'll give you this money unless you enact regulations against AI, in which case we're not going to give you that money. That's usually how they operate. It didn't even have that. It's expecting to operate through enforcement in the courts, and I thought that's uh, ironic or Hippocratic hypocrisy, um, a hypocrisy, depending on how you want to look at it, because you have these Republicans, Trump and Stephen Miller et al., who also complain about um, the roadblocks that federal judges have been throwing up with regards to their immigration policies. So they they want to have it both ways, and um, I'm very interested to see what happens when a state actually begins to push back on the rules that the federal government is disseminating, because as states begin to understand that increasing the deficit, or increasing the debt ceiling by $5 trillion and constantly increasing the deficit, what is the value of the money that's being doled out to them? And when states begin to figure out some sort of alternative, which to me is beginning to sound like a lot like Bitcoin strategic reserves, then they're going to look at the rules that the federal government makes and say, why would I accept this worthless cash? Because you're not paying your debts.
Yeah, and I think when we look at who's lining up to support the bill and who's not supporting the bill, it seems like it's people that I would have expected. So we've got Rand Paul, we've got Thomas Massey not supporting it. Are there any other defectors that you've noted that are within the Republican Party? I imagine the Democrats are largely lined up to vote against this.
I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene was a notable exception, but no, not. I have not seen much pushback beyond Thomas Massey, and Thomas Massey seems to be uh, I don't know, a pariah in many ways. Somebody who really leads this is concerned about the money that Congress is spending that they don't actually have. But a lot of other politicians, most of them, um, they don't care. And until somebody tells the federal government, no, we're not going to lend you any money, then this is an issue. This is a can they're just kicking down the road.
The
But
thing that kind of shocks me at this point, given where we are with AI, is that for anybody like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who would have complaints about what's in the bill and said it took her a while to read it, it's not like we don't have a system where you can just throw this at the LLM, the large language model, and then say, read the bill, summarize it, tell me what the salient points are, and then let me know where positions that I've taken in the past might conflict with what's in the bill. This is an operation that takes at most like 5 to 10 minutes to do. So anybody that says, well, I didn't have time to read it or whatever, it's like we are at a point in the world where technology can actually assist with this. And I don't mean this to be seed your thinking to the AI, to the machine, but it at least can assist with some of these activities. It can say, summarize what's in the bill, look through it. They have aids as well. I mean, it's not like this is an insurmountable thing, even given the limited amount of time that politicians usually have before they're given the finalized version of the bill. And it's disingenuous at best to think that they aren't participating in the formation of these bills, or that they don't have a look at it, because most of the time when these bills are getting formulated, they've been in the works for some amount of time. I mean, you don't have 17,000-page bills that get created overnight. These things are in the works for quite an amount of time. So even if somebody were to say, well, I didn't have a chance to read it, or I didn't know that that provision made it in, or whatever, it's like we are definitely at a point in time where these things can be looked at and can be considered using technology that's at hand. And that wasn't the case 5, 10 years ago, but it certainly is today.
well, even if they use an LLM to get some summary of the bill, at the end of the day, the problem is there's that that the federal government is out of money. And the only thing that people want from the federal government is to end taxes. But the only way that politicians get to stay in office is to figure out how to give money to, so, select selected groups from their constituency, and so they have every incentive to say yes, despite there being no money, and so you know, to me, it should be easy that the politicians go and say no. But if they do so, if they say no to any of these resolutions, if they understand that the only power that the federal government truly has is to spend money, why do we call them bills? It's because they send a bill to the Treasury because they're resolved for some sort of policy to be implemented. Well, if the only thing that they can do is send a bill to a Treasury and we're out of money, then they have nothing to do. So I
I mean, this at this point, with Elon Musk stepping away from Doge and stepping away from the role that he had to try to figure out how to rein in spending. I mean, that's capitulation. That's essentially saying, here is what many tout to be one of the smartest people in existence, running some of the top companies in the world, has access to an unlimited amount of talent, smart young kids that could be working on this, whatever. I mean, this is Silicon Valley's the best and the brightest, and they didn't really seem like they accomplished much of anything. I mean, that to me says this is an insurmountable problem, a train wreck that is unstoppable. And what the only leap out is to buy Bitcoin and hunker down, because here it comes. The US dollar collapse is inevitable at this point. If we're passing a bill that raises the debt ceiling by $5 trillion, then the spending will continue apace. The debasement of the dollar will not stop, and there's only a couple of exits to this train wreck. So jump on board, or you're gonna get crushed on what they're gonna do with the dollar here.
Back in January, there was this flap over Vivek with MAGA and Vivek Ramaswamy, and it was over H-1B visas. Remember, we covered this, and Trump's golden ticket into the United States. Well, the golden ticket came immediately afterwards, but we talked about this, and Vivek jumped ship when it came to Doge, and I said, well, it's because he has political ambitions, and he either doesn't want to contradict or is beginning to understand that MAGA is uh, is serious about nationalism has a bad name, but nationalism in part is uh, is forcing these hard questions on democratic bodies, Republican representatives, whatever we want to call them, but forcing the hard questions on them rather than turning to outsource those problems around the world, or what we call globalism. And Vivek Ramaswamy, I think, began to understand that creating some institution that was focused on waste, fraud, and abuse using technology or some sort of tool to address that problem was not going to end well. And so he jumped ship early and turned his political ambitions towards the governorship of Ohio. Maybe a really smart guy. Also, he might have had some sort of idea about the impending catastrophe that was in front of the federal government. Again, if their only tool is to spend money, and we're out of money, then he might have looked and said, "Oh, state government's where I want to be. The national government has given me recognition, but the place to go solve problems is at state government." Elon Musk didn't get that, and he persisted. He persisted with Doge, uh, and it has I don't know what it has accomplished for him apart from grief. And I
Well,
do.
I think one of the things that people have said that they accomplished with Doge was they got some data that they had wanted, and that they also were able to get in and work on some of the problems that Musk had with some of his contracts. That he had some issues that were going on with Tesla, with SpaceX, and with some of the other things that were happening. And so, and I don't know if it's considered to be a conspiracy theory or if it's just a rumor, but I've heard that this was, some of what Doge accomplished was, and that what Elon Musk, what his ultimate aim was. I don't think it's genuine to say that he went in there and thought that he could actually cut spending by the amount that he did. That just doesn't seem to resonate. Like, how could you go in there, be so naive, and not accomplish hardly any of the goal that you set out to do?
I mean, I think that he did believe so. He, you know, anytime I see somebody entering the political fray and talking about how they're really good at business, and it comes down to accounting, and they can fix everything with accounting, I say that's not how politics operates. But I do applaud Doge for bringing some of this spinning to light. And I didn't believe that for one instance they were going to be able to stop the spinning, but at least uh, they have brought it to the attention where money was being spent and how money was being spent. And this also brings up, again, we move in from uh, the tearing down of the compartmentalization and the hiding of data by executive bureaucracies, and some of those, some of those holding information about American citizens, some of them holding information about American foreign policy. But if we're to have a democracy, I don't understand how secrets, or if we're to idealize a democracy and pursue it in a republic, I don't I don't understand how keeping secrets from the voting public, or the voting Democrats, small d, makes any sense. And but this is where we come to the fears around Palantir are well justified. Um, I don't know that I buy into all of the concerns or the conspiracies about the intentions of Palantir, but I do know that holding large amounts of data and also being able to keep what you're doing with that data secret is a recipe for disaster. So I hope that the takeaways that we bring from the revelations of Doge and the waste, fraud, and abuse that they found in government. I hope that we begin to understand that the solution for that is in enforcing sunshine regulations, making sure all of that data is public. And when it comes to the personal information of Americans, sure, there's some things that we want to keep private, but for information about what sort of benefits that we're getting from government and some other things, maybe that needs to be accessible for everybody so that we can make sure that politicians aren't abusing where that money is going. But I don't know how that's going to play out with Planter. I don't know if we're going to have to be burned vis-a-vis the Patriot Act and the FISA courts before. I mean, we haven't even uh, fixed that catastrophe from 2001.
I don't think we really did. This surveillance state that started to get set up with what happened with the Patriot Act and some of the follow up bills, it's I think it's gotten worse. I think it continues to just erode our personal liberties, and this has been the criticisms of libertarians within the Republican Party for quite some time. But there really hasn't been much of an ability to block these things, or like the votes that have come up. It's there's just not enough support to derail these, and so under the guise of we need to do this is the only way to fight terrorism or whatever other reason is given, we just keep marching in this same path. And so here we are now. It used to be we had to get into the surveillance state to fight terrorism. Now we have to get more into the surveillance state to stop illegal immigration. It's like whatever reason we need to just keep marching in this direction.
Well, this is also it's so interesting that during the campaign, the MAGA was so focused on, and it was such a they were so anti CBDC, and that was such a motivating, like a motivating call to action for them. We don't want a social credit score, but then turn around and amalgamates this information that the government's collecting, and they want to put that into a technology company that manages databases and that essentially will be compiling exactly that, a social credit score. So I think that, and this was a unpopular opinion to have amongst the MAGA and Republican crowd back during the campaign, but I think we begin to have cause to pat ourselves on the back for championing something like Chia, because the position of Gene and Bram and those in the Chia community that the answer to CBDCs is it's non sequitur or non starter to say that the technology exists and we're going to politically say no to it. What we need to be doing is to be moving it into the open and out of the ability for politicians to manipulate as much as possible. And I don't know that the world of crypto has understood that what Palantir is moving to, what this amalgamation of the government data on citizens really means. There's all these fears and hand wringing about China, but we have it at our doorstep, and maybe not just at our doorstep, but it's already in the house. So this is going to be this is going to be a political conversation that happens for some time, and all I'm seeing from MAGA now is a reaction, and the reaction is, turn it off, fight it, stop it. But the real answer should be, how can we make this how can we take this out of the possibility of politicians corrupting politicians or bureaucrats corrupting or abusing that data as much as possible, and that to me is the correct way to move forward on it.
So, as this comes up in the Senate, there probably is enough support to pass it, and so that means it's it's happening, right? Or what do you have any sense of if this is going to pass? I think we kind of talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but I still don't know if there's anybody beyond Rand Paul and maybe a couple of others, and I don't know if that's enough to stop the passage of this bill. I know the Senate's pretty tight, but and Rand's probably going to stand his ground on this one, but I don't know that that's enough to make this not go through. So it's happening.
Well, I don't know about that. I had a suspicion that the big beautiful bill would make it through the House and be stopped in the Senate, and that's not me paying it too close attention to what any of the politicians said. I just know that it's very close, and that the $5 trillion increase in the debt ceiling might be a non-starter for more than just Rand Paul. I think about Kennedy, Senator Kennedy from Louisiana. There's a couple more who I think this would rub in a very wrong way. So, in the other thing about politicians is they can talk about wanting to see legislation, but um, they often make the political calculation of, well, I'll vote for it so that I can say that I supported it, but cross my fingers and pray that it doesn't work in the background because I know this is a bad idea. So I I hope to see the Senate kick it back to the House. But but I don't know. The other thing that is, as this bill works its way through the Senate, we also have this question of, who's going to be buying this American debt. If we're already dramatically increasing the debt of the federal government, and we've had the downgrade from Moody's with regards to their expectation of America to be able to pay back their debt. And now we also have Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury, assuring other countries and investors that America would pay its debt. Well, some might see that as a benefit. Oh, great. Scott, the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States promised us this. But what I say, whenever there is, whenever the questioning of the ability of the United States has become so apparent and unavoidable that the Secretary of the Treasury has to make these assurances, we should say, how long is the Secretary of Treasury going to be in office? How much can we believe them? Sure, he might believe in the ability of America to pay his debt, but uh, he might be focused on he might be an incredible optimist, or he might be outright lying. Um, I don't know what, but I do see there is there are growing concerns about America's ability to pay off that debt.
Well, I think famously it was one of the Fed chairs. I'm blanking on exactly which one said it, but that there is an unlimited amount of money at the Federal Reserve because they have the ability to print it. So I mean, it's a technical matter of whether you default on the debt because you pay somebody in some worthless thing that you've just created out of thin air, which is what we've been doing. So I think at some point, the implosion of the US dollar and saying, yeah, we didn't default, we paid you. it'll be a distinction without a difference when dollars are so worthless that nobody really wants them because there's so many of them have been created. And having lived through something like that when this happened on Terra Luna, it's, yeah, I mean, you still get wiped out. So anybody that's left holding the bag at the wrong point will feel very sad about this. And I, if you ask who's going to buy it, well, it seems like Tether is going to keep buying it. And I don't know. Maybe that's the only buyer. That's a buyer of last resort is the CIA front company.
Well, and Scott Besson also promised, that we're not going to inflate the dollar in order to pay off the debt. Well, that's exactly what we're doing as we speak. The question is, will they ever be able to get ahead of those debt payments? Did you happen to see, by the way, the idea that was floated by our favorite senator, everybody's favorite senator from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham?
Tell me more.
Oh, you're gonna love it. He said, well, China holds a lot of our debt. How about we just stop paying the interest on that? Wow.
I
Yeah.
mean, them's fighting words there.
Well, them's fighting words there, but Lindsey Graham has the audacity to say what a bunch of other politicians are thinking. Let's just pay the debt service that's owed to Americans, because that's the only constituency that we have to answer to. And so Lindsey Graham begins to inch his toe across the line of sovereignty, and begin to threaten other countries of the world. We've seen our politicians do so through sanctions, and those people who are not towing the line, going back to how does our federal government work with our state governments, through this notion of, well, we'll give you money, and if you don't toe our line, then we're going to not give you money, or maybe try to keep you away from it in every way possible. Well, now they're talking about doing that with investors, and it may come to that. I mean, to me, the answer to the debt problem with America has been let's go back to what the definition in the Roman times of a tyrant is. A tyrant is an autocrat who would take over the democratic government of Rome and forgive debts. The tyrant literally meant a forgiver of debts. So it's nothing new. This problem of democracy and the predilection of humans to want to say yes and have an inability to get together and collectively say no. And the answer in the past for finding somebody to say no was in some form of autocracy. Which then, if we turn to the fears that are expressed about Donald Trump, and we see these people floating out these words like autocrat, or who wants to be king, whatever that is. There maybe there's something to that, but we really do have a problem in the past and now with democratic governments and their inability to stop spending money. So I feel like that's coming to a head sooner or later. Maybe our government collectively will have the gumption to declare sovereignty, to cancel the debt payments. I don't know. But the other, I would say it's more likely that they begin to realize that they can just print the dollars and that they can then pay off debts. But that is going to be a lot more inflation, price inflation, and everything else, because once the cat is out of the bag and the people realize what has been occurring, that that money doesn't come from prices, but money comes from the supply of money, and the supply of money is being dramatically increased by the amount of debt that has been created, promises to pay in the future. those prices are going to chase that understanding, and and this administration might be caught holding that bag. So cheerful news, but it's where we're at.
Yeah, I not looking forward to the ramifications of what are actually going to happen as we continue to inflate the dollar and dollar loses its dominance. It's a topic that we have talked about frequently on the show, and I think it's the kind of thing that nobody's really anybody that's cheering for this is not going to realize was like how much this is going to change the life of Americans. So yeah, I'm not looking forward to the ramifications of this actually coming to play. I really wish we could try to rein this in, but it just doesn't seem like there's much appetite for that.
On a more positive note, this is why I'm so interested in these notions of strategic reserves, in crypto, and even in gold. I mean, I'm still interested in, because as this problem, this unsolvable problem with how the United States pays off these trillions of dollars of debt, some things that politicians and bureaucrats begin to understand is we need an alternative, and that alternative, what seems to me that they're beginning to look at are strategic asset reserves, and those strategic asset reserves are an alternative to the Federal Reserve, and they want to make monies that are backed by something else. And but I think what they are going to, as they begin to make that realization, the other realization that they're going to have is, um, the middleman, the government being the middleman in a monetary system, is about the integrity of the system. When we think about the government being in mail and post office, we don't expect the government to be sending us packages. We expect the government to be trustworthy in delivering those packages, and to understand, to have some sort of address system or be able to find us. And we're going to have that same realization when it comes to money. And again, this is why I find uh, some of the some of the answers in crypto and being in decentralization, as opposed to uh, just a coin in a shared database being worth something. Um, so anyway, I think that's probably a good place to close it at. I don't know if I have anything else to say about the big beautiful bill. I don't think that it'll pass. I don't think that it's a good idea for the United States to raise the debt ceiling by $5 trillion more dollars. I guess I'll leave it there.
It's a place to stop. It's like a good place to stop on this discussion, but it's with a heavy heart and a heavy head that I hope it doesn't pass, and I think if they're going to go back to the drawing board, hopefully the fiscal conservatives will have their voice be more heard in this. But yeah, sad tidings to really consider this on this Thursday.
Well, and I might chase it with one more comment. I never can stop. You're just going to shut me up. But if it doesn't pass, we're going to see the old shutdown rearing its ugly head. And Thomas Massey, if you remember back in, was it November? I believe it was November, maybe it was late October, had said, we can't kick the can down the road. We need to shut down the government so we can all come to the table and make these hard decisions. So that might be in the future of the Republicans. And I don't know the timing of it, but I would imagine if Democrats are playing their cards wisely, it will be before the midterm elections. So something to look forward to.
All right, we'll get you next time on FOMO.